Shri Anirudh Jindal, Honorable Vice Chairman, Geeta Ratan International Business School, Chief Guest, Professor S.S. Mantha, Ex-Chairman, All India Council for Technical Education, Guest of Honor, Professor Harsh V. Pant, Director and Head at Observer Research Foundation, Ms. Prachi Jindal, Dean Academics Kids, and renowned academicians from Pan India. A very good morning to all of you. I, Swati Sharma, feel extremely fortunate to welcome you all on behalf of Geeta Ratan International Business School in the inaugural session of AICTE, ISTE-sponsored online induction program, which is based on the theme Outcome-Based Education, the NBA approach. Geeta Ratan International Business School was established in the year 2004. GIBS is affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, Delhi, and it is approved by Bar Council of India for law programs and All India Council for Technical Education for management programs. GIBS is currently offering programs like MBA, MBA International Business, BBA LLB, BA LLB, and BBA. The institute has been graded A by National Assessment and Accreditation Council in the second cycle. GIBS has been rated A+ by State Fee Regulatory Committee, a fee committee of Government of NCT of Delhi, and rated highest grading A by Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and GGSIP University. It has been rated A by Academic Audit Cell of GGSIP University consecutively from the past 8 years. Also, Geeta Ratan has been rated number 2 Pan India by Times Business Survey consecutively for the year 2018, 19, and 2021. Now, before we proceed further, let's start this wonderful program today by Ganesh Vanna, who is the Lord of Intellect, Art, and Wisdom. Let me introduce about AICTE IST induction program. The refresher program is essential for teachers in technical education with a view to update their knowledge and enhance their organizational and pedagogical skills. This FDP spreads over 6 days, 4th and 10th of January 2022, 3 sessions a day. The sessions comprise of topics on outcome-based education, majorly covering the NBA approach, namely outcome-based pedagogy, problem-based learning taxonomy, outcome-based assessment, and documentation for NBA. Additionally, the sessions on the new education policy and stress management are the 2 topics of key relevance. As with other refresher programs of the AICTE, ISTE, in terms of learning, our program offers a valuable learning platform on which effective teaching learning process could be based. Takeaways from which will be immensely useful for you all and for your organization's growth. With this backdrop, I would like to invite Honorable Vice Chairman Shri Anirudh Jindal, Geeta Ratan International Business School, to deliver the welcome address. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much, Swati. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir. Audible.
Thank you so much. A sunny morning to everyone and a warm welcome to all of you at the AICTE ISTE sponsored orientation induction program on outcome-based education NBA approach. I, Anirudh Jindal, on behalf of Geeta Ratan International Business School, welcome all the guests and participants who are present here to attend today's induction program. I'm thoroughly pleased to witness you all here today. I proudly, as the Vice Chairman of Geeta Ratan International Business School, who has been given such a platform by AICTE and ISTE to develop and enhance the skills of faculty members through various learning resources for outcome-based education. We must know that who has been the father of this outcome-based education. To my knowledge, William G. Spady is considered as the father of outcome-based education. Spady became the lecturer at Harvard University and the Ontario Institute of Education from 1967 to 1973. He has also worked as a senior research sociologist at the National Institute of Education and as an associate executive director of the American Association for School Administrators. Spady is the CEO of N4, a global network of OBE experts, consultants, and visionaries. Spady coined the term outcome-based education in 1988 as an extension of works completed by John Franklin Bobbitt and Ralph W. Taylor. In his conceptualization, Spady described outcome-based education as a reorientation in educational system towards what is essential for all the students to be successful at the end of their learning experiences. This is primarily entails the identification of what is important for the learners to be able to do so, that the curriculum, instruction, and assessment are organized accordingly. His latest works are Outcome-Based Education's Empowering Essence, published in 2021. And I will personally recommend all of you to read it to get the in-depth about the topic that is outcome-based education. With all these words, I'm extremely delighted to welcome the chief guest for the day, who is none other than Professor S.S. Mantha, ex-chairman, All India Council for Technical Education. Sir is an eminent academician and an able administrator of who joined AICTE in 2009 as the vice chairman and has been at the forefront for bringing some radical changes of transparency and accountability in its administration. Sir, it's an honorable moment for GIBS to have your prestigious presence in today's event. I also find immense pleasure in introducing our guest of honor, Professor Harsh V. Pant. Sir is head of Strategic Studies Program at Observer Research Foundation, New Delhi. He holds a joint appointment with the Department of Defense Studies and King's India Institute as Professor of International Relations at King College, London. On behalf of Geeta Ratan fraternity, I welcome you, sir. I also bid a very warm welcome to all the renowned speakers and participants who took out their valuable time and joined us today to be part of this beautiful crafted program. We are honored to have you all with us. I heartily acknowledge the numerous responses we received for this induction program and the efforts put forth by the organizing team under the coordinator, Professor Dr. Vikas Gupta. I guarantee that the sessions to follow will be productive and worth your precious time. To conclude, I wish you all great learning experience at GIBS and success in your pursuit. Thank you all. Have a great learning ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful words and for your esteemed presence here. Now, I would like to introduce to you all the guest of honor, Professor Harsh V. Pant. He's a director and head at Observer Research Foundation, Delhi. He holds a joint appointment with the Department of Defense Studies and King's India Institute as Professor of International Relations. He's currently in research is focused on Asian security issues. He writes regularly on various Indian and international media outlets. He is also a non-resident with the Vadhwani Chair in US-India Policy Studies at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Washington, D.C. We welcome you, sir, and we are honored for your virtual presence with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to be here. Although I don't come from a technical background, but technically we are all educationists. So I think the parameters on which we around which we talk about are very similar. So I'll just start by thanking the institution, Mr. Jindal, the Vice Chairman, and the entire team who has organized this, and of course Professor Mantha, who's here as a chief guest. So thank you, and thank you to all the participants who are here for this faculty development program. Again, it's a privilege to be part of this inaugural ceremony, and the program looks very well crafted, and I hope you have a very enjoyable few days. And it's also pretty interesting and opportune that the program has been conceived in the very first week of the new year, when you are relatively free of your other responsibilities, so you can concentrate fully on your own development as faculty members. So thank you for having me as part of this conversation. I think I will make a few points about education in general and how education has changed, and the way we think about education needs to evolve considerably. And I think as educationists, as teachers who are in the front line of this, during these very extraordinary times, often we talk of health workers being the frontline workers, which they are. But I think what has happened in the last 2 years is that teachers have become the frontline workers, because they are having to adapt every single day. And no one thought 2 years back that teachers would be, most of our faculty teaching both from school level to higher education level would be, using virtual means primarily to communicate with their audiences. With that, eventually this would become the new normal. But this is what has happened. The fact that we are able to engage with each other virtually, the fact that this program is happening despite a raging pandemic outside, is a testament of how radically the landscape of education has changed, has evolved just in the last 2 years. And of course, Mr. Jindal was talking about the entire pedagogy that has changed over the last several decades, where outcome-based education has become the norm by which we are measuring our students' performance, through which we are measuring what faculty is doing, and through which we are measuring how our education system is delivering. And I think as teachers, much as we want physical interaction, we want physical engagement, we want that physical intellectual back and forth with our students, something that our students also relish and cherish. But I think given these times where we have learned to communicate with them differently in the last 2 years, and I think specifically in the Indian context, where suddenly one fine day teachers were told that they have no other alternative, both on a lighter note, if they have to have their salaries, or if they have to continue as faculty members, that they have to engage with their students through a very different medium. Some of the teachers, some of the faculty members may not even know the basics of the technicalities of engaging through the medium through which they were being asked to do, but they adapted quite quickly. And I think by and large, the education system, if you look at it, yes, there are challenges, but especially in the higher education, the adaptability has been quite fast. And I think, that whole terrain that the education system has traveled, we are now settling into a mode where it seems that even going forward, some kind of hybridization of education is the new normal. I don't think, the education system today will ever go back to pre-2019 to 2020 phase, because there are certain learnings that have happened, and I want to link it to outcome-based education, because a lot of the things that we talk about when we talk about outcome-based education, we have seen in the last 2 years that they can be delivered through a different medium, and they can be delivered effectively. So if you are just giving a lecture, it can be made more interesting. If you want to involve students, the technicalities, the techniques that are that we have today, technological landscape that we have today, allows us to do that. And I think what the most important thing that it has forced our teachers to do is to innovate. And I think, when you are set in a particular system, then you don't want to innovate. And teachers are as guilty as any other party. We are very settled in our comfort zones. Black and board se kaam chal raha hai, kagaz se kaam chal raha hai. So why should we change? And I think a crisis of this magnitude has forced us to change. And a lot of us who are unwilling to change have been forced to change, both because of our financial requirements, as well as for the sake that if you love doing teaching, then there is no other way but to adapt. So I think innovation in teaching, because of what has happened in the last 2 years, has been one of the most remarkable stories. And the faculty development as an aspect has happened organically. We may not have had many faculty development programs over the last year and a half, but I think faculties had to develop on their own because there was no alternative. So I think, when you look at the state of education today, and when you look at the challenges that are there, innovation has become a means through which the teaching faculty has adapted. And that also brings in a certain value added to the larger education environment. And of course, India's new education policy to adapt. I think the new education policy has also forced us to challenge some of our older assumptions and to look at education through a different lens. Primarily, I think what you'll be talking about over the next few days in terms of how you can make it more focused, more suited to the requirements of the student-centered learning, and applying the outcome-based pedagogical approach to the way we think about education, to the way we think about teaching, to the way we think about engaging with our students. Now, what is remarkable about India today is that if you talk to anyone about India, and they will tell you how remarkable the demographic potential is in India. We often talk about the demographic dividend, the youth dividend. India is a very young country, and there are some advantages that accrue to us because of that. If you look around the world, countries are aging, countries are becoming old, gray. India is one of the few places where youth is really taking charge, and where for at least for next one generation, we are going to see a great demographic dividend. But I think the same set of people who will tell you that this is, that this is of immense potential would also tell you, if they were honest with you, that the one system that is not living up to its potential is the education system. That we are not imparting our students the skills that are needed for a 21st century academic environment. And whichever way you cut at it, whether it is primary, whether it is tertiary, whether it is secondary, whether it is higher education, I think as educators in India, we have failed so far in imparting that cutting edge to our students' experiences, to the way they operate in the 21st, to their ability to operate in the 21st century environment. And existing system is not delivering. I think most educators know it, most students know it, and I think intuitively we understand the problems. And I think what new education policy has done is to make us confront those problems. That those problems are something that can't be brushed under the carpet. That these are the challenges that are there, and you have to now confront them either through a structural change, or through a change, or through a more evolutionary change, which I think might be more suited in the Indian context, but also it would take some time. But, and therefore, I think a document like the new education policy was needed at this critical juncture, so that we recognize that our fundamental assumptions about the way we were imparting education, needs to change and needs to evolve. Now, something, this is a platform for technical education, and AICTE has and ISTE have organized this. Now, if you think of the technical education in India, we often look at the numbers, right? We look at the numbers of technical institutes, we look at the numbers of engineers graduating from India, and yet, just a few months back, there was a study by McKinsey which said, look, 80% of engineers coming out of Indian institutions are unemployable. Now, this dichotomy that we are producing these huge numbers, and yet the employability rate is so low, that the fact that employers are not looking at them favorably is, I think, a big indictment of the system that we have created. That, of course, there are, in social sciences, we always thought that we were not doing that well. But when it came to technical education, there was a belief, because of the cutting edge of IITs and NIITs, that we are, at the cutting edge of this phenomena. But I think the sobering effect has been that despite the increase in the number of institutions, despite the increase in the numbers that are coming out on the job market, there is a sense that the quality has not kept pace with what a 21st century education means. And again, when you look at what 21st century education means, it means a system where we move away from information, from fact-based delivery, to one where we are imparting critical skills. And it's this, I think it goes back to this idea of what a new education policy talks about, what outcome-based education actually means, where we are looking at the deliverables differently, where we are not looking at, rote learning in some ways that has been the traditional standpoint, where we are looking at what those facts, how those facts which are available everywhere. Google is the biggest guru today. Now, if Google can deliver, then what is the value added that a faculty can give? As a faculty, as teachers, we should be able to move students away from a fact-based, rote-based learning to one where we are imparting them certain life skills, where they become adaptable in whatever circumstances they are put in. So, as the fourth industrial revolution changes the nature of the job market, when you talk of artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, quantum technology, all of these are changing the nature of the job market. And in this job market, the premium is on skills. It is not on how much you know about the world. It is on what kind of skill sets you have that make you adaptable to wherever you are put. It makes that skill-based education is something that becomes critical, not only to the viability of the person's job profile, but also to the viability of wider economy. And I think that is why the question of the employability of our, for example, engineering graduates has been much in discussion in India, because ultimately the question is not simply about individuals' job market capabilities. The question is also about India's future economic profile. So it is not linked, it is linked through an individual to the larger national purpose of education and to the larger purpose of nation building. And I think that is where the connect should be from a teacher's perspective, which is looking at adaptability to be the key means of delivering certain outcomes, and key competencies, which include things like, which we often talk about, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and in terms of a wider purpose of character and nation building. I think all those key skills have to be brought together to ensure that the student and the key stakeholder, which is the student-centered learning approach, which emphasizes that individual is empowered to become a member of the larger national community, where he or she is able to contribute fully to the economic growth as well as to the social regeneration of the society. So therefore, outcome-based education, of which you will be talking about over the next few days, becomes a key as it allows, as it provides students the flexibility, as it gives students clarity in terms of what is to be delivered, excuse me, and how it is to be delivered. So metrics to measure outcomes make it possible to chart out the academic trajectory of individual students, because that allows students to grow organically rather than in a larger system where sometimes individual students get lost. So I think for the faculty, which is facing unprecedented pressures from all sides, there is pressure of what is happening in the wider health sector, what is happening in the technology sector. The outcome-based education allows them the possibility of not only moving forward with a student-based approach, with a student-centric approach, but it also allows the faculty to remain relevant to the changing needs of not only the academic environment, but I think also the larger socioeconomic context. So therefore, I would like to congratulate the organizers. This program is very timely and has been crafted very intelligently to cater to some of these questions which are now front and center, both for the individual academics as well as for the larger academic environment that India faces. My compliments to everyone who has organized this, Professor Gupta, Dr. Tanmay Pant, and everyone else who's part of the organizing team. And thank you to Mr. Jindal for having me here, and the institution for having me here. And I wish all the participants all the best, and I hope that this is first of many such conversations that continue to that the academics in India and beyond continue to have with each other and amongst themselves as they chart a new course, not only in their own trajectories, but also in the trajectory of India's growth as a leader in the education sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing the audience and for joining us today. And now it's time to introduce to you all our chief guest for the inaugural, Professor S.S. Mantha. He's the ex-chairman of All India Council for Technical Education. He implemented several e-governance initiatives and facilitating regulations in a 6-year stint. Earlier, a professor of robotics, control theory, and artificial intelligence at VGTI. He now occupies the emeritus chair. He has more than 280 publications in national and international journals and conferences, besides 3 books. He's the author of National Skill Qualification Framework. He was member Karnataka Skill Development Authority and advisor to Government of Andhra Pradesh. Presently, he's the Chancellor, KL University, and professor at the National Institute for Advanced Study, Bangalore. He's also a chairman of Technical Committee, National Cyber Safety and Security Standards, and IT expert for the Government of Maharashtra. We welcome you, sir, and we are honored for your virtual presence with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Aniruddha Jindalji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, Harsh Pant and all the other faculty, invited guests. First of all, a good morning to you all and a happy new year, because we are meeting for the first time in the first week, like Harsh Pant said. Yes, I mean, outcome-based education has several different connotations, and we need to look at the context in which we are talking about outcome-based education. And for me, probably the context should be set in the national education policy, because there are certain things which are different from the previous policies. We also need to look at how we could possibly redefine the outcome-based education to meet the requirements as envisaged there, that of creating an individual who is, who has all the faculties developed and so on. Now, having said that, everyone speaks about outcomes in education, outcomes in probably every aspect of life. And if there are no goals to achieve, there is nothing to look forward to, and therefore there will be no innovation, there will be no development. So therefore, the outcomes of any process become very, very important. And when they are looked at from the perspective of education, then there are certain things which are tangible and certain things which are intangible. And therefore, we need to build the intangibles into a process which can actually, deliver what we are looking for. In the early days, if you remember, we had an accreditation process where inputs were given a lot of importance, which means, when the early days of accreditation of institutions and so on. For example, they spoke about the number of classrooms, the kind of infrastructure that you develop, the number of teachers that you have, and so on. And it was expected that if you provided for all these, then probably quality is an automatic outcome. Now, that process may have been fine from that perspective about 20 years back, probably in the early 80s, when the private enterprise came into education and so on, because people are more interested in setting up institutions and so on. But over a period of time, people felt that these are something that's absolutely essential to set up an institution. So why should they become a part of, the quality measurement and so on? So we had something like we evolved into what is called as closed loop control system, which means we have a system which has several elements. For example, in education, I can look at students as one entity, faculty as another entity, infrastructure as an entity, the society outside as another entity, the industry which employs these people as another entity, and so on. So all the quality aspect has to travel through all these elements in order to translate into something that's an outcome that's accepted by the society, by the industry, and so on. So if you actually if you draw a objective function with all these elements in place, then you can measure the output, and that output may have some error from what you have actually envisaged as the output should be, and therefore there is an error, and that error you add to the next cycle at the input. So over a period of over a certain number of iterations, you will have a certain quality that comes into the system. So over this chain of entities, you have certain quality that you prescribe at the output level, and then you try and measure that, and then you come back and try and rectify the system. Now, in this process, this is a typical closed loop control system, which is what we are using today. So what really happens is you have a peer committee, you have certain review, and then they point out certain errors, certain certain places where improvements can happen. You go back and then try and rectify the system and so on. But it's very difficult to know in the current, even the closed loop system, as to which element is actually contributing to your, final product quality. Is it the students who have contributed to the loss of quality? Is it the faculty that have done that? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the society? Are the expectations too high? Things like that. So therefore, the system to come to a steady state in the current closed loop system basis, that time will be much larger. So therefore, what we must evolve, and the world today is evolving, is to go towards the adaptive based control systems, which means in that objective function, which has multiple multiple elements like students, faculty, and so on, you need to create a closed loop around each of that component, which means if I have students, there's a closed loop around that, which means I have certain outcomes from the students, certain expectations from the students having given these inputs, and then I have certain outcomes from the faculty, I have certain outcomes from the infrastructure, and so on. So instead of seeing the entire process as one single process, now you create closed loops around each of the entities that form the complete chain. So therefore, here the advantage is that your disturbances in the system will be settled much faster, and your quality that you are actually looking for in the system is achieved much faster. So the adaptive based system is what is being followed around the world today, and that's one point which I would want to inform. The second point is about the challenges. There are obviously several challenges. In fact, there is shortage of faculty, there is shortage of good students, because that's the raw material in the product. And therefore, institutions which may provide lesser facilities but have a very good contingent of students, like in many of the government institutions that we have, they tend to do much better than a complement of students who are maybe lesser endowed, but even with all the facilities that they have, may not be able to reach that state. Therefore, we need to understand the dynamics around each of that entity that we are talking. So as far as challenges are concerned, yes, there are a lot of administrative issues involved. There are regulators who tend to come out with overlapping provisions, and then some of the provisions to follow, things like that. And even within the defined system that we have problems of defining, like, for example, central universities, state universities, private universities, deemed to be universities. And there are a host of institutions around which the rule position changes. So therefore, but at the end of the day, we expect the same outcomes. Now that seems to be a little challenging in the kind of ecosystem that we have created. The NEP talks about rationalizing some of those things. So good. Now the third challenge that the next challenge that we have is basically the face-to-face education versus the online education. All that we have done in the last 1.5 years is 1.5 to 2 years is we have retrofit our current teaching in a classroom onto a Zoom kind of platform. Now, whatever we are doing in the typical classroom is what we are doing on a Zoom platform. Now, this is not an ideal situation. The pedagogies must change. The mode has changed. So therefore, in order to get at the same outcomes, you also need to rethink about the whole paradigm of teaching, learning, and so on. In a typical online environment, you need 2 experts to be doing a particular coursework. There is one expert who actually goes on to explain the content, and there's an expert who actually interacts with the students, who is actually as good as the teacher himself, but he interacts with the students, gets into the chat box, does the chatting on the question that the students raise, and so on. But there is very little content which is developed on these kind of principles. Is the use of social media. Today, you have several dimensions of the social media which are being used to deliver education in various ways. Some of them are effective, some of them are not very effective, but their use must be moderated. Their use must be channelized. Fundamental problem is quality comes at a price. All this outcome-based education, everything that we are talking about has something to do with what kind of financial stability you have, what kind of finances you can apportion to various activities, and so on. So the bottom line is quality comes at a price. If you need experts to come from outside, they need to be paid. They need their travel has to be taken care of. If the guy has to stay on the campus for 1 full semester and teach a course, then obviously you have to create a certain kind of environment for him to be there for that kind of time. So you need to provide industry connect, the research connect, the collaborations that are possible. So therefore, quality has many facets. There is, for example, people, I'll give you a small example that happened recently. In the US, almost 200 institutions, they sued the institutions. In 200 institutions, students sued the institutions, class action suits. And their point was, you prove to us that the online degree that you have given us is as good as the face-to-face degree that you would have otherwise given us. And second is, why should we keep paying the same amount as a tuition fee for an online program when you have actually promised us a face-to-face program? Now, obviously, there are a lot of litigation that went into it. The students actually lost the case. The courts have withheld the idea that education is education. The mode really doesn't make it. As the outcomes are met. Now, this, as long as the outcomes are met, is a very keep practicing over a period of time. The next is curriculum change. We have been talking about quality. We have been talking about quality metrics, improvement in the system in terms of outcomes, and so on. Now, no one has really looked at the kind of curriculum changes that we have brought about. For example, I personally believe that an engineer, whether he is electrical, mechanical, computer science, or whichever discipline he chooses, an engineer first and foremost is an engineer. He must have certain basics taught to him that are, the building blocks of an engineer. After that, he becomes an electrical or mechanical or civil or whichever discipline you talk about. Even a management guy has to have certain fundamentals which are absolutely, but in the need to get into all the new technology that is coming about, somewhere several universities have given away the basic core prerequisites that an engineer requires. And at the end of the day, we go back and complain that this student who was passed out from so-and-so institution does not have the requisite idea about certain basic requirements. For example, many universities have removed a coursework on materials and mechanics. My understanding is, if you are a computer science engineer, if you are an electronics engineer, for example, how do you become a good electronics engineer without knowing anything about materials? So therefore, there are a lot of those kind of aberrations. And the cumulative effect is that our outcomes are suffering. The next is about employment. Employment and employability. These two are different things. Employability is the competency-based skills that we provide to a student. Employment is the outside opportunities that are available. According to most of the people in the business, it's extremely necessary that we create a synergy between these two. What is available and what is given. What kind of opportunities are available and what kind of people fit in this space. If you look at employment, you have primary sector, which is based on, the produce from the agriculture, produce from mines, produce from earth, basically. And that has a capacity to produce, to generate about 10 to 15% of employment opportunities. When you go to the secondary sector, you have manufacturing, and that has a potential of about 35 to 40% employment generation. And in the third service sector, you have about 50-60% of possibilities of employment generation. So therefore, if my manufacturing sector is not doing good, then the engineers, whichever discipline they have, will probably migrate into a sector where there are available jobs, where there are available employment opportunities. So therefore, we need to connect both these requirements. We need to provide competency-based skills based on the job roles that are defined within the industries, enlarge the manufacturing sector, enlarge the primary sector, and only then the service. You a country cannot probably do very well and keep going at it only with the service sector being promoted and the primary sector. The other, within the NEP, there is a provision of multiple entry, exit, and accumulation of credits and so on. The traditional understanding of the outcome-based education will have to be reviewed in the light of multiple entry, multiple exit provisions. It's a very good provision. But then what really happens is, if there is a 4-year engineering program, if I apply this multiple entry exit idea in this program, what it really means is a student after doing 1 year of engineering can actually technically go out, work for maybe a year, 2 years, or whatever. His registration will stay. He can come back into the system, and probably he goes out because of financial problems and so on, support the family, things like that. So he can come back, continue his studies, keep accumulating credits along the way, and that's the way it goes. But here, the difficulty is after 1 year, when he drops out, it's true for science, it's true for commerce, technology is only an example that I've taken. If in a 3-year program, if a student has to drop out after 1 year, why should he drop out? He drops out basically because he may have financial difficulties and he's trying to find a job and make something out of that play, or maybe for other personal reasons. Now that the industry must be as dynamic as the provision in the NEP, by which I mean that there must be a defined job role for the curriculum that he has completed in 1 year in the institution, after 2 years in the institution, after 3, after 4, and so on. So the curriculum designed for outcomes, for skill-based education within the NEP, in order to get the multiple entry exit operational, is also going to be the design of that curriculum can pose challenges because it needs to be connected to the job roles at every year level. Obviously, there are several new technologies that are coming up. About employment, there is just one other point that I wanted to inform. The current employment space is changing very fast. In the early days, we used to see a pyramid-like structure for employment, where you need low-skilled people, many in numbers at the base, and as you go up, the skill level goes up, but the numbers come down. In the current days of automation, of artificial intelligence coming into probably every single area, your machine learning, your industry 4.0, your IoT space, they have all reduced the manual requirements even at the entry level. Intelligent agents have taken up several jobs that otherwise a human being would have done at the primary entry level. Now, because of this, what has happened is the base of the pyramid has actually shrunk, which means that even at the base, even at the entry level, you need very high skilled people, but small in number, which means a lot of automation has probably created new requirements of skills, has created new employment opportunities, but it has disturbed the entire employment space. So the educational institutions, for all that it matters, will have to look at these changes that are happening within the system and redefine the requirements of outcome-based education. Of course, I didn't go into the specifics which you will be doing anyway in the next few days with various experts there as to what is outcome-based education, how is it related, how is NBA related to all that. Now, all that is a matter of detailing. I have tried to inform a few points on which you can ponder upon and maybe create a better learning space from the students' perspective. Yes, it is going to be a student-centric space with personalized learning coming in, learning management systems coming in, which keep track of the students' progress, the faculty progress, create a lot of data analytics, and also create pathways, multiple pathways. And there are within the NEP, there are also provisions of taking certain credits from certain university, some more credits from some other institution. So all those possibilities are available now. There is a lot of effort that's being made to create a student-centric space. All that is good, but probably the implementation will be a challenge. And unless all of us come together to solve those issues, and I hope we will do all that. And probably the times to come are very, very exciting in terms of new activities and new ideas being emerging. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor S.S. Mantha, for the inaugural address and for joining us today. We are honored to have you here. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Vikas Gupta, Professor, Geeta Ratan International Business School, for vote of thanks.
Honorable Chief Guest, Professor S.S. Mantha, Chancellor KL deemed to be University, Guntur, Andhra Pradesh, and ex-chairman, All India Council for Technical Education. Guest of honor, Professor Harsh V. Pant, Director, Studies and Head, Strategic Studies Program at the Observer Research Foundation, Delhi. Honorable Vice Chairman, Geeta Ratan International Business School, Shri Anirudh Jindal. Respected Dean Academics, Ms. Prachi Jindal. Officials of All India Council for Technical Education and Indian Society for Technical Education. Participants from Pan India. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this inaugural ceremony. We are extremely privileged to have Professor S.S. Mantha, Chancellor, KL deemed to be University, and ex-chairman, All India Council for Technical Education, as the chief guest for this inaugural session. As a foremost academician and institution builder, Professor Mantha's presence would go a long way in ensuring that this orientation refresher program objective is met at all levels. We heartily thank you, sir, for taking time out from your tight schedule. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We are delighted to have as guest of honor Professor Harsh V. Pant, Director, Studies and Head, Strategic Studies Program at the Observer Research Foundation, Delhi, and Professor International Relations at the prestigious King's College at London. As a foremost international relations expert, Dr. Harsh's presence will help provide further credence to the felt need of an outcome-based education. Thank you so much, sir. We are grateful to the officials of All India Council for Technical Education and Indian Society for Technical Education for giving us this opportunity to conduct 6 days long online induction program on outcome-based education, NBA approach. At the outset, I would like to extend my gratitude to Honorable Vice Chairman, Geeta Ratan International Business School, Shri Anirudh Jindal, for being instrumental in providing navigation and support in the preparation for this program. In the same vein, I would like to thank Dean Academics, Geeta Ratan International Business School, Professor Prachi Jindal, for being resourceful and efficient in the run-up to this event. Thank you, ma'am. We are grateful to all the participants who represent different colleges and universities from major part of India and who have registered in large numbers, making thus the program more meaningful and representative. Thank you all for your support and cooperation. Together, we shall ensure that this program is able to realize all stated objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Dear participants, we'll be starting the first session of the day at sharp 11:30 a.m. on Teams, which is on New Education Policy 2020 by Professor Sandeep Srivastava. He's the HOD Department of HSS from JP University of Engineering and Technology, Pune. Kindly join the shared link on time. And also there is a link for attendance that needs to be, that is shared in the chat box. So kindly fill for the attendance, and thank you everyone for joining. Now I request Chief Guest Professor S.S. Mantha, Guest of Honor Professor Harsh V. Pant, Vice Chairman Shri Anirudh Jindal, and Dean Academic Ms. Prachi Jindal to kindly exit the session. Thank you everyone. Also, I request all the participants to kindly exit.